This is one that I want to dwell on a little bit. Mary. If Mark writes Peter's gospel, if Mark writes under Peter, Luke writes a lot of stuff about Mary. And so my guess is that Luke had a very close, intimate relationship with Mary in terms of interviewing her, in terms of the history of Jesus Christ and Mary. And so you get a lot of Mary's story in the book of Luke. It's found nowhere else, just in the book of Luke. And so I just want to read through some of these verses, and you'll pick up on the Mary side of the story of Jesus and things. Luke chapter 1, verse 29. Luke 1:29. Mary was greatly troubled at his words. The angel comes to Mary, and Mary is very troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Now, by the way, contrast that. You guys have read Matthew already. In Matthew, the angel comes and talks to whom? In Matthew, the angel comes and talks to Joseph, because Joseph is struggling with whether he's going to divorce Mary because she's pregnant. He knows it's not him. And so he's saying, well, what's going on here? And so he's thinking about divorcing her privately. The angel comes to Joseph in the book of Matthew chapter 1. Here in the book of Luke 1:29, you see Mary was greatly troubled at his words, the angel's words, and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Luke gives you Mary's side. Okay? Chapter 2, verse 19. The shepherds coming to the birth of Jesus. Now, by the way, notice the shepherds in Matthew coming to the birth of Jesus. When did the shepherds arrive? Have you ever seen one of those Christmas creches? And in the Christmas creche, you've got the wise men on one side and the shepherds on the other, and baby Jesus with the animals and Mary and Joseph in the middle, right? So you got the shepherds and you got the wise men, baby Jesus in the manger with the animals, okay? Actually, the truth is that the wise men came, when they come to Herod and say, where is he been born king of the Jews? It was like 2 years later. And so what you've got is, with Herod, you've got the wise men coming probably a couple of years later. So the shepherds were long gone. The angels came and said, basically, go this day to the town of Bethlehem. There's the king has been born, Jesus born, in Bethlehem of Judea, as said by the prophet. And the angels come down singing Hosanna or whatever, and the angels go, glory to God in the highest, kind of thing. So Luke then records the shepherds. Well, the shepherds were there probably on the night right after, around the birth of Christ, right immediately, the shepherds in the field outside of Bethlehem. Okay? And Luke picks that up. That's probably Mary. And then notice what it says further. The shepherds coming to the birth of Jesus, picked up in Luke, not picked up anywhere else, really. Mary treasured all these things and pondered them in her heart. Mary treasured all these things up and pondered them in her heart. What's that telling you? That's telling you what's going on inside Mary. Now, who would know that? Luke would know that if he interviewed Mary. And so this is, again, second thing. She treasured all these things up in her heart. That's telling us the inside of Mary. Here's another one. Simeon's blessing on Jesus at the temple. So Simeon, do you remember, and this is chapter 2, verse 33. Simeon's that old man. And the old man picks up Jesus and then basically was waiting for the consolation of Israel. And basically God says, Simeon, man, you aren't going to die until you see the Lord's anointed. So Simeon, you're the man. You're going to see Jesus. You're going to see the Son of David. You're going to see the Messiah everybody's hoping for before you die, Simeon. Simeon, a wonderful story, this old man picking up the baby Jesus and then blessing him in the temple area there. And it says what? Then, okay, so you got Simeon, this old man, waiting for, the Messiah to come, and God says, okay, you're going to see it and stuff. But then what happens when Joseph and Mary bring the child to the temple? And it says, the child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. So even as a baby, the Simeon picks him up, Mary and Joseph see Simeon and see these wonderful things said about their child, Jesus. And they say, whoa, it says that the child's father and mother marveled at what was said about them. Who would know that? Joseph apparently seems to be dead early. We don't read much about Joseph, the father of Jesus, after the birth narratives and stuff. He seems to be well gone. But here you've got the father and mother and the marveling at what was said. That's chapter 2, verse 33. And then lastly with this theme, chapter 2, verse 51. It says, then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. So they go to Nazareth. He was going to Nazareth and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Who would know that stuff about what was happening early in Nazareth? Jesus, his mother, was obedient to them, okay? And his mother treasured all these things in her heart. Kind of reminds me of my own wife and her children. She can basically go back and tell all these infant stories about how so-and-so nursed, actually, and how the early years of our children. My wife narrates all those wonderful stories and things and has those. She's treasured them up in her heart. Okay, those were really great moments in our family when our children were young. Now they're all old, and that's all different now. But anyway, so this is what a mother would remember, those early stories. And so you get Luke, chapters 1 and 2, the only place in the Bible you get these early stories of Jesus and stuff. Luke seems to, and my guess, and then others actually as well, that Luke seems to have interviewed Mary and gives you Mary's side of the story of things. In Israel, while Paul was in jail, then for 2 years in Caesarea, Jerusalem, Caesarea, Luke is apparently going around interviewing people like Mary, and so Mary's gospel, Mary's story is told here. And the date, most people would say before 65 A.D. Paul was still awaiting his first imprisonment in Rome. We said that he's going to go free for a little bit and then come back for his second Roman imprisonment. That's probably 2 Timothy 4 and stuff. Second, he knows he's going to die. This time he's hopeful he's going to get out. And it's possible then, what we're suggesting is that the book of Acts was written to get Paul out of jail. The book of Acts is written to get Paul out of jail, and so he's writing to his most excellent Theophilus, giving him the book of Luke, giving him the book of Acts, so that this guy will be able to go in and help Paul in his case and get him out of jail. And so, therefore, it has to be early, because Paul's going to die about 68. So it's got to be time enough for him to get free, time to get nothing back into jail, and be tried again, and then be put to death. Peter will be crucified upside down, as we said. Peter said he's not worthy to die like Jesus, and so he was crucified upside down. Pretty brutal. You remember Peter denying Christ and stuff, and then Peter dying of crucifixion himself. Peter was a Jew, so therefore they would be able to crucify him. Very, very painful death and things, as we know. Paul, on the other hand, was a Roman citizen because he was born in Tarsus. In lower Turkey there, eastern Turkey. He was a Roman citizen, and therefore they could not crucify him. They had to behead him. So Paul would have been beheaded in his death as a Roman citizen. Now, what's interesting here again, once again, when was the book written? And you've got this statement in the book of Luke mentioning this, basically, that the temple would be destroyed. And let me just read a little bit of this, if I can, from chapter 21, down about verse 20 and so, and just read some of this. This is kind of in the, I believe it's in the Olivet Discourse there, talking about the end of the age. It says, when you see Jerusalem, this is chapter 20, verse 20. Chapter 21, verse 20. When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. So here you have the desolation of Jerusalem. When is the desolation of Jerusalem? Titus comes in at 70 A.D. That's a big, important date for us. The Second Temple, the Jews revolt in the 70 A.D. Titus comes in, wipes out Jerusalem and destroys the temple, throws every rock of the temple down. We've actually got those rocks, and Get Lost in Jerusalem. You can go to the South Walks excavation and actually look at the rocks, the very rocks that were from the Second Temple that were thrown down. When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those in the city get out, and those in the country not enter the city of Jerusalem. For this is a time of punishment and fulfillment of all that has been written. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. There will be great distress in the land, wrath against this people. They will fall by the sword and will be taken prisoners to all the nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And so you've got this kind of apocalyptic description then of Jerusalem and the destruction of Jerusalem that would happen in 70 A.D. Now, critics then, who cannot take Jesus prophesying anything, saying prophecy has to be after the event. We've talked about this before. Vaticinium post eventum. And what that means is basically that critics can't accept Jesus knowing the future. Critics can't accept two things. Miracles. Jesus can't do miracles because miracles don't happen. Everything is natural. Science accounts for everything. There can be no such thing as miracles. So basically, miracles got to be gotten rid of. I'm talking about modernism now, 19th century, 20th century. Now we're into postmodern, so miracles are back. But anyways, in the 20th century, there was no miracles, and you couldn't prophesy things ahead of time, telling things ahead of time. And so they basically have to date the book of Luke then after 70 AD, saying Luke is looking back at the destruction of Jerusalem rather than Jesus is looking forward to it. And so we would disagree with that, saying, no, by 70 AD, Paul's dead, long gone. I mean, not only is he imprisoned the first time, and he gets this period of freedom, but he's imprisoned the second time and then killed, 68 AD. Paul's dead 2 years and stuff. It's too late. You aren't going to write Most Excellent Theophilus and say, hey, Paul's dead, man. What are you going to do? Get him buried after he's dead 2 years? And stuff. So this argument doesn't work with the book of Luke and pushes. And Luke, of course, coming after Mark, most likely, so that would push Mark back, again, before the 70 AD period and things.